Salve, meu povo! Aqui é o Igão. Ó, ouvindo um podcast no caminho do trabalho ou enquanto prepara a comida? Acertei? Mas uma coisa que eu sei é que cê tá aí no corre. Hoje em dia, todo mundo é correria. Parece até que o dia tem mais de 24 horas. É por isso que Rexona te dá muito mais proteção pra você encarar a sua rotina. Rexona, proteção superior a 72 horas por dia. Rexona não te abandona.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, the show that looks at the money behind the music industry with me, Steve Lamack, and Music Ally's Head of Insight, Stuart Dredge. As you probably noticed, we've been down to one episode a week recently as well, on the one hand, we're attempting to keep one eye at least on what was happening in the music business, but also we were trying to have some summer holiday time off. But we're back, and we can't really start anywhere else but with the Oasis reunion. What have you made of it all, Stuart? Just the level of interest from fans, the media coverage. What were your first thoughts?
Yeah, do you know, it happened very suddenly and yet very slowly too. Like, this has been constantly rumoured, hasn't it, I suppose, in recent years, that promoters wanted to get them back together. I think there was a rumour last year they booked certain nights at Wembley and that came to nothing. And every interview, they were kind of taking pot shots at each other. And then suddenly it's all on. And it kind of happened on that Monday morning, which, I don't know. Do you know, I'm torn. I'm really genuinely torn, because when I was a teenager, I still remember seeing them do, I think, what was that show? The White Room.
Oh, yeah.
And they did Acquiesce for the first time on that. Like, they were like pumping out B-sides that were better than loads of other stuff in the charts. You know, it was really exciting. So I was genuinely, I loved them then. And just seeing them a few times in their latter years kind of killed some of the magic for me. And then some of the stuff that's happening with ticket system. So it almost feels like it's exciting, but also there's a bit flat for me. But I don't know, how about you? Because you're coming off doing a podcast about them. It's kind of
yeah. It's strange, isn't it? I was still surprised that it happened. I was amazed that they kept it so quiet. I heard some very strong rumours a couple of days before the Times first wrote that it looked like it was definitely going to happen, but to the level of organisation to get this all done ready without the stories leaking out, I thought that was amazing. Obviously we can't claim any credit or tell you we were giving you a hint, but have a listen back to our episode, the episode of this podcast from July the 17th, where we actually speculated, didn't we, on how much Oasis might make financially from a reunion tour. And it turns out that we were being pretty conservative, I think, although obviously we were basing our figures around the band just doing a handful of shows. But this is, as I say, it's a much bigger tour than I anticipated, so it will gross a lot more money. But if you remember, one of the people I spoke to, one of the industry insiders, said the magic figure for the band, which, he was suggesting it almost certainly been offered to them already to reform a while back. But the figure he gave was £100 million, which I thought was eye-watering enough. But as I say, I think that we were basing that on a handful of gigs, not, what is it now? 17 shows, I think.
It's
so, yeah. Gigs, isn't it?
Yeah, UK and Ireland, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the morning paper Metro quoted another expert now saying it could be as much as 400 million, which I think is a bit toppy, to be honest. 400 million, I think that's quite top end, but of course nobody knows unless you're inside the camp. Most of these figures are just speculation, aren't they, for now?
It must be how much the T-shirts cost. You know, they could be another. if they do a Blur and sell 60 quid T-shirts, you know, that's another big fat wedge of cash.
Yeah, I was trying out of curiosity, just for my own curiosity. I was doing, because it's impossible to accurately work out how much the gigs are going to make, partly because of the range of the ticket prices, which were all different depending on whether you were standing or sitting, and then whether they were the original price or the dynamically priced tickets, which is something which we'll get onto later on. But if you think 5 Wembleys, and even if you took, and this is a very low average, some of the tickets started at 150 and there were 250 tickets. So say as an average, it was £200 a ticket. 5 Wembleys, That's £70 million upwards just in London. And that also depends on the capacity. If they run, that's on like letting in 70,000 people. If they run Wembley to a 90,000 capacity, that's £90 million. Heaton Park, 5 nights, 80,000 people a night. So that's another £80 million. And then out of that, then the question is, how much do the band get? I think you said last time it'll all go to Liam and Noel anyway. The rest of the band will be on session rates.
Do we even know who else is in the band yet? I don't. No. I saw a thing saying Alan White had kind of hinted he might be in it.
Right.
I've seen a lot of articles going, where are Giggsy and Tony McCarroll now? So we don't know, do we? Who's if Andy Bell's involved? It's just the brothers, as far as I can tell at the moment. So.
Yeah, as we record, and this is Tuesday afternoon, I haven't seen any definite confirmation of the lineup. But when it comes back, just going back to how much they'll be paid, because I was thinking about this, whether I would imagine that they will probably. In the agreement to do these gigs, whoever the promoter is that they were talking to, the promoter would have offered them a guarantee, I think. So they will know, or would have known, well, we will definitely make X million pounds out of this before anything else happens. They would have set a mark of how much money they wanted. And then it's down to... Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say it is also a low risk situation, isn't it? They were bound to sell out. It's not one of those gigs where you sort of plan a tour and then you don't sell tickets and you have to kind of quietly cancel it down quickly. They always knew that they were going to sell out Wembley, they were going to sell out Heaton Park. So there was, in that sense, there was very little risk from their part, wasn't there?
Yeah, regardless of ticket price, because obviously after they've agreed on the guaranteed figure, then the promoter will go off and work out the costing, set the ticket price so that they can afford to run the gigs and everyone gets paid. Because if you think about the promoter will have to hire the venue. Venue costs have soared over the last few years. Can you imagine how much it costs to hire Wembley Stadium?
I'm sort of my 50th birthday's in 3 years. I'm starting to think about venues. So, I would quite like to know that figure.
Yeah, and then don't forget, this you might need these as well. What about security staff that you'll need to employ? And that's something we might come back to later. But if you want to run through the cost, just looking at the cost of putting on a gig like this, there was a report I found which was in the Guardian, I think, from I think it was last year, saying that most big artists, so in this case Oasis, after that initial run of costs, so after venue hire and you take out the ticket seller's cut and then there's a PRS payment and VAT and everything else that comes out, according to The Guardian, they were saying that what you're left with is roughly 50 to 70% of the gross income going to the artist and the promoter, which I've not had time to check with anyone. But if let's say that's in the right ballpark, so if you work that through using those figures, so very roughly between 50 and 70, let's say it's 60% that goes to the promoter and the artist. So 60%. So if we're using the £200 ticket, Heaton Park, 80,000 people a day, 80 million quid, 60% of 80 million, so that would leave after costs 48 million pounds for the promoter and the bands. And I don't know how much the promoters would take out of this, but for sake of argument, they probably would, desperate to do the gig, I would think. So it would be between 15 and 10%. Let's say it's 10%. So you take out, what's 10%? 4.8 million. So that leaves you 43 million pounds. But then before that goes to the band, there'll be the management cuts. Might be 2 managers involved, I guess. There's the live agent's fee, because the live agents are the people who are the buffer between management and promoter. Unless management might, in this case, have gone straight to the promoters, I don't know. And then all the costs, obviously, that the band has to pay, which includes all the logistical costs. So there's crew, transport, hotels, backdrop, that sort of thing. All
new
that
Parkers.
stuff. Yeah, new Parkers. And then they have to pay their accountants, and then they get what's left, I guess, which will still be let's say, still be a huge amount of money. which, as you were saying, will probably go mostly to Noel and Liam. But I mean, they won't go. They're not going to. No one's going to come out of this short, are they? I don't think.
No, I mean it's interesting because I don't know the personal situation here, but I know another guy has famously had a big divorce. So I think, assuming in his case, some of that money is going to be then flowing out of his account.
Do you know what? That's exactly what. Because can you imagine when the rumours gained traction by Monday, and I was away on holiday, but by the Monday, my phone was buzzing constantly with people saying, "Will you come on the radio and talk about Oasis?" And so I did a few of these interviews, but Five Live, funnily enough, that's what Five Live said. Is Noel just doing this because he's going through a costly divorce? And I said, then it's not, honestly. I mean, one, he'll still be all right for money, I think.
Yeah.
Dear the Daily Mail, Noel Gallagher still will have a lot of money. And secondly, I don't think there's enough money in the world that would make Noel sit in a room or stand on a stage with Liam if he didn't want to do it. If there wasn't something within him saying, actually, do you know what? I fancy doing this. He's got to have another reason just outside of the money.
That is the thing with these reunions, I think. And that's always the fear I have when there's a band like who is it just for the money, or is it for that kind of reason? Because if it is, it's not going to be good, I don't think. People can maybe just stand on a stage and put up with it for 2 hours, but like it's always good if someone has reconciled for personal reasons, or they've just kind of dealt with all the rubbish. And that was my worry here, is like, why are they doing it now? Has something changed? And they haven't done an interview together yet, have they, for it? Like, we haven't actually seen them. And everyone, obviously the internet being what the internet is, there's lots of speculation of, is the image even them in the same photographic studio, or has it been kind of, taken separately? So I'm really, so I would love to hear them talking about why and how they are together. And I would like to think it's for good reasons and not just about the money. But yeah, we'll find out.
As I say, as for the actual money, I don't think anyone inside, as I say, the Oasis camp is going to tell us the exact figures anytime soon. But the amounts of money just washing around. By the time we come to, and we'll talk about, as you mentioned, merchandise. We'll talk about streaming and the resurgence in sales of Oasis records in a sec. But I guess we should also probably give some thought to the cash that was flying around on Saturday when the tickets went on sale. And they weren't cheap to begin with, but then they only got more expensive as the day went on. So tickets go on sale. Obviously, huge queues. Everywhere you looked, there was a screenshot of somebody's phone, wasn't there? Or the screenshot on somebody's phone saying you are, 986 billion in the queue. But the figures, I don't know where they plucked these from, but the estimated number of people applying for tickets, 14 million people. So it's massively oversubscribed, which is where this thing called dynamic pricing comes in. And dynamic pricing, it's not a new concept in music, but I don't think a lot of people were prepared for this in ticketing terms. What is dynamic pricing? You're the man who can explain this to us.
Yeah. Well, everyone's suddenly becoming an expert, aren't they, this week? Aren't they? But yeah, so dynamic, like you say, it's not a new thing, even in music. But dynamic pricing, it's sometimes called surge pricing, which may ring a bell for people. Mm-hmm. It's just because it's what happens when Ubers get suddenly more expensive because it's midnight or it's New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So what it means is prices vary according to demand. So if lots of people are trying to buy something, the price goes up. And it's very, very common in booking hotel rooms. It's common using for airline tickets. Like if you're trying to book a seat on a plane that is nearly sold out, it's going to be more expensive. And it can be used for ticketing. And it's actually quite common in the US, I think, isn't it? So it's been in the US for a while. Ticketmaster have had this idea of dynamic pricing. It's not that we're not that used to it in the UK. I think it's been used a few times, but this is the most high-profile example yet. And it's been quite unfortunate, really. So, and Ticketmaster has been the company in the line of fire over kind of what happened. So yeah, basically people would start queuing to buy these 148 quid tickets, I think they were. And when they got to the checkout, they'd see a thing saying, these are in demand, and they're now £355. And the problem there is you've been queuing for God knows how long on your computer. And then at the checkout, you're like, I've got tickets. Oh, I'm going to have to pay more than double what I thought I was going to pay.
Mm.
And what are you going to do? Are you going to just kind of walk away, close the browser window? It's not a nice sort of situation. So what Ticketmaster's been doing this week is it's been pointing people to its explanation on its website, which basically is that promoters and artists set the ticket prices and they can choose for those to be fixed. So those tickets sell for that amount, and when they're gone, they're gone. Or they can choose for them to be, quote marks, market-based. And market-based is when they can vary according to demand.
Right.
So, I mean, before we get into sort of my little rant about this is like, I just want to know who came up with this idea. Like, which genius sat in a room and said, right, if there's a really hot in-demand gig, we're going to have millions of people queuing online for it and have to wait ages. And we can try and make that process as smooth as possible, but, can't do much about that. But what we could do is we could make sure the prices can double when they get to the checkout and force them to make a decision. Like, it just seems like the most fan-unfriendly concept. And it isn't like that doesn't happen when you buy a plane ticket or a hotel room. You don't queue for 4 hours because you're such a big fan of the Ryanair flight to kind of, somewhere in Spain. But in ticketing, you're there, you're excited, you want to go and see a band. And this is like a big punch in the teeth. And you know what it's like if you're in a queue and you're at the front of the queue and then you lose your place, you go back to the beginning again. So
yeah, can you imagine the old days where you were in a physical queue? The Chinese whispers of the fact that someone 50 places closer to the box office window says the tickets have just gone up by 50 quid, and by the time they get to you, mate, it will be £100 more than they were half an hour ago. I mean, it's strange. I mean, I think because it feels uncomfortable in an era where we've dealt with this idea of drip pricing, haven't we? And making inroads into knowing if you go to buy a ticket for something online, you should know the finished price, including all the extra fees. And that seems to be right. Yeah, we agree with this. So we want it to be a much more transparent process buying the ticket, so you know how much you're going to pay. But in this case, you've got no idea how much you're going to pay. When you log on to buy £150 ticket somewhere, surely that's the price you should pay. And I think that's what the solution to this is.
Yeah, and here's the thing though. So everyone is shouting at Ticketmaster about this because they were the ticketing outlet.
Yeah,
and all that. There's loads of petitions online now saying make Ticketmaster ban this, but not to let them off the hook. But artists and promoters can choose to use this, or they can choose to not use this.
No, it's true.
There was Robert Smith of The Cure was tweeting about it in all caps, as he usually does, and he said he had a conversation about this idea of dynamic pricing, and he was like, "No, that's a scam. I'm not doing it." So I think in this kind of situation, yes, everyone does want to shout at Ticketmaster, but they need to look at the band and the promoter and say, well, why have you chosen to do this? For Oasis, they were going to make loads of money from this, whatever, if those tickets had sold front. So there is a question there of like, why would you turn this on? Like, what is the rationale other than it will make us a bit more money, other than the loads of money we're making it? But the interesting thing I think has been the follow-on, really, because I mean, there's lots of outrage and people complaining on, people are always shouting online about stuff, and it doesn't always lead to anything happening. Like, people just complain and then it dies down. But two things have happened this week. The first was Lisa Nandy, who's the culture secretary. She said at the weekend, well, we've already said we're going to have a consultation on secondary ticketing. So they're already planning to crack on touting. And she seems to be saying, right, we're going to add dynamic pricing into this consultation. We're going to look at this. So it's now on the government's radar of should we do anything? And then this morning, there was a quote from Trading Standards, also the UK's Chartered Trading Standards Institute. And they said that dynamic pricing isn't against the law, but consumers must not be misled by the indicated price. And so if you're misled about the price of something, and if that causes you to take a different, and the phrase is transactional decision. So they were saying basically you wouldn't have joined that queue if you'd known the tickets were going to be 355 quid. So trading standards are kind of taking an interest now. So there's two things I think where this may lead to action of some kind or change in the rules. So I think that the hoo-ha isn't just an online, row. I think there could be some hard questions being asked of everyone involved.
Yeah, who'd have thought? Who would have thought it that the Oasis reunion would change ticket law, potentially?
I love
that's
they were trading. I think they were trading standards getting involved. Well, because you get trading standards getting involved in gigs would be quite funny. You know, they could be like, well, it's not the original drummer and the bassist, so I'm not sure this is.
I'll tell you the other thing about dynamic price, the dynamic pricing on this particular gig, though. And again, this is data which we'll never be privy to, probably. But I wonder what the percentage was of dynamically priced tickets versus the amount of tickets that were sold at the original price. And does it kick in? Does an algorithm kick in? Or does the software react to an algorithm that says, right now, this is really popular? Because it was popular all day. It's just, there's
who knew it? Yeah.
There's a lot of unanswered questions, isn't there? But I mean, at least it started the debate. And as you say, we have a Labour government now who seem keen on actually doing things. So something might well come out of this, whether it's about dynamic pricing or secondary ticketing, which was in Labour's manifesto. I think was the fact that they were going to try and address the issue of the touts.
And these things are linked, I think. And one of the things that people say, and what Ticketmaster will say, I'm sure, about dynamic pricing is it's about trying to beat touts, in theory. It's about, well, if the value of this ticket, if tickets are in demand, the value is £355, people would pay that on secondary markets. Well, let's let you charge for that, the primary ticketing. And then all that money goes to the band and the promoter rather than going to the tout. So that was the original rationale. This is a way to kind of tackle touting and tackle the bad things about secondary ticketing. And I think one of the big things of this consultation, hopefully, will be, are there not other ways to crack down on ticket touting other than charging fans double what they expected to pay when they started the queue? Like it seems so obvious when I say it that way. I know there are arguments for this being a thing, but it's going to be, it feels hard to me to make them. But yeah, so hopefully we're going to have it. Hopefully we're going to have that inquiry and we're going to figure this out.
So imagine you're in the queue on Saturday to get a ticket, not knowing that possibly when you get through, the price is going to be double what it was, or, you know, it certainly will have gone up by 100 notes or something. But just as you get to the checkout, you are kicked out of the queue because the software suspected that you were a bot. Because I'm sure I don't have to explain this, but ticket touts in the new online era have worked out ways of setting up software which pretends to be a punter, so that they can buy multiple tickets. They have hundreds of bots trying to buy tickets, which they'll sell on. And to be fair to Ticketmaster here, I mean, all ticketing companies are doing their best to counter these online touts. I mean, I know, having spoken to some people at ticketing firms, you know, they have teams of people constantly on the lookout for suspicious activity, because, believe it or not, they would rather the tickets went direct to their customers rather than being sold to touts. But they basically say it's like playing whack-a-mole. As soon as you crack down on a bot farm in Bulgaria who are using an address in, I don't know, Welling Garden City, then another one springs up. And as soon as you find a way of spotting and dealing with one piece of bot software, they've written a new one. It's never ending. So in this case, the first thing, and they did try, I guess. I mean, the first thing Oasis did to try and sort out who were the humans and who weren't was you had to register, didn't you, for pre-sale. You had to answer an Oasis quiz question, which was,
I love this.
Who was the first drummer in Oasis? Which I guess was the same as ticking "I am not a robot." Although I tell you what they should have done, Stuart. They should have. What would have been more fun is if, you know, when you click on some websites and it comes up with a picture with a grid over it. Right, they should have done a picture with a grid over it. Tick all the boxes that include a picture of a member of Oasis. Loads more fun.
Wow. Do you know what? I did think that if you're going to do that, at least make it something you can't Google in 2 seconds if you don't know the answer. Like, it should have been stuff like, I don't know, what age did Bonehead get his first guitar? You know, what was Liam's childhood nickname? It should be proper hard stuff, you know. But yeah, I mean, do you know, anyway, this is a simple conversation, but people are starting to talk about this. How do you make sure that fans get the tickets? And this idea of proving your fandom, it's being talked about more, and a simple quiz question, isn't it? But in the future, you can imagine there'll be ways of like, well, how much have you been streaming Oasis? Have you seen them before? I mean, obviously that's difficult because you probably saw them before these systems were invented. But this is one of the things. This is one of the things that isn't done out pricing. That's trying to make sure tickets is how can someone prove they're not just a human, but they're also a fan of that band or that artist? So there's more work to do there, maybe. I suppose the trouble with that sort of thing is it's not always the person buying the ticket who's going. Like, so think of all those parents buying tickets for Taylor Swift for their child, who they're not demonstrating a Taylor Swift fan, but they're buying it for someone who is. And do you really want to have gigs that are just the hardcore fans? You want new people coming into. But there's all kinds of stuff that could be tried.
I think the real problem was there were just too many people wanted to go. That's the problem here. Even if you did a fan-led, if you sifted out, the real, what you could call the real fans, you would still have probably more than 1.4 million, which I believe is the total number of tickets. So, I mean, this is the thing. Yeah, it was difficult from the outset.
Well, that's it. We come up against this thing where there are simply too many people who want to see Oasis. There's simply too many who want to see Taylor Swift. So there is this is an impossible thing there. Like Taylor Swift and Oasis cannot play 400 nights at Wembley to kind of cater full demand. So there's got to be some kind of process of how you sell the tickets. But as you've seen, I think online, people are really cross about how this one worked.
Well, yeah, I mean, imagine just going back to so you're in the queue for tickets. You get to the checkout, and then the anti-touting software, which Ticketmaster or one of the companies are running, suspects you of being a ticket bot, and then you kick. I mean, I'd be absolutely raging, especially as within an hour of the tickets going on sale, social media was awash with people offering tickets for sale, which, brings us back to, you mentioned secondary ticketing. And again, to give them credit, Oasis from the off has said that the only resale of tickets they would recognise was through either Ticketmaster or Twickets, and they could only be resold at face value. Although Twickets got themselves into some trouble, and they got some stick for charging a commission on the resale, which meant if you were flogging a pair of £350 tickets, there was an additional charge on top of that, which was like £100 or something. But although they've now reduced the commission, I think, haven't they? They've certainly capped the maximum charge at £25. But yeah, elsewhere you only need to be online for a matter of seconds to see just how many hundreds of Oasis tickets are on sale at inflated prices on websites like Viagogo and StubHub. And Oasis issued another statement, I think it was yesterday, didn't they, saying just a kind of reminder that unless tickets are resold through official outlets, they'll be cancelled. The question then is, how's this being policed? Because if you're prepared to buy a ticket for an inflated price from someone you don't know via one of these websites, when will you find out that ticket's being cancelled?
I heard about
how do you find out? Because in past cases, it's come down to people actually turning up at the gate, hasn't it? I think this happened before. Yeah.
I was thinking about someone who went to Taylor Swift gig and they were told their ticket was fake on the gate. It's like the obvious advice is don't use any of those sites. But especially, I don't want to give credit where it's not due, but I feel it was Ed Sheeran, one of the first big examples here of a promoter and an artist saying, we will cancel any tickets we see on these things. And that seems to be something that bands can do. So, yeah, like you say, we should give credit to Oasis, but they have been trying to crack down on that side of things.
Returning to our brief, which is the money in the music industry, we should, aside from the gigs, because the news story I've never seen. I think there was a point someone was telling me where the entire front page of the NME website was made up of about 12 stories about Oasis.
It's like old times.
But yeah, in this ongoing 24-hour clickbait Oasis madness, even ahead of the gigs, they'll be making some money, won't they? Because as mentioned, two I think is it 3 of their albums are now in the top 5? I think Fontaine's DC are at number 2. Is it Sabrina Carpenter is number 1? Then Fontaine's, and then Oasis are at number 3, 4, and 5 in the album chart this week. And I imagine the streaming figures have gone through the roof as well, have they?
They have, yeah. Actually, I've got an albums update from yesterday, and it was Oasis at 1, 2, and 5 now.
Right.
Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds at number 3, and Sabrina Carpenter at 4. So Nick Cave is doing pretty well in all this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I was looking. So because the day it was announced, I was doing some looking at their streaming stats, and luckily then that's given me a baseline to work from. So on the day the reunion was announced, the Monday, Oasis had 21.6 million monthly Spotify listeners, which was pretty good for a band of that era. That's good. But today they've got 29 million. So around 8 million more people are listening to Oasis this week on Spotify alone than were a week ago, which only makes them the 175th biggest artist on Spotify, strangely.
Right.
Which is just one of those scale things where you think, actually, Sabrina Carpenter, for example, has 81 million Spotify listeners. So there's a really interesting thing of scale here about what's big in the live industry, which is Oasis, the biggest thing you hear. But in streaming terms, they're still, growing. And on YouTube, they were averaging in early August about 1.5 million daily views of their music videos. And then on the 27th of August, which was the announcement, that spiked to 6.4 million. So basically quadrupled their kind of things. But the fun thing, guess where the biggest city, and the reason I quote Spotify and YouTube before everyone writes in saying, what about Apple Music? Is that those are the two services that give public stats that you can dig into. So that's why I always quote them. But guess where the biggest city is in terms of people listening to Oasis in the last month on YouTube?
In this country or around the world?
Around the world. Anyway.
Around the world?
Where Oasis getting the most YouTube music views right now?
I don't even know if I'd be able to tell you which country it is. I don't know. Is it somewhere in... Let's have a think. Is it somewhere in Italy?
It's not. No. I want to say warm, but that's there. It's quite away from Italy. So their top 5 cities on YouTube are, in order, Bangkok, Seoul, London, Lima, big Peruvian audience, and then Jakarta. Right. And on Spotify, it's London, Jakarta, Manchester, Santiago, and Sao Paulo, which just kind of shows this interesting thing about streaming now is what these countries where there are huge streaming audiences, people are streaming Oasis there. So if you're Oasis's management now, you might be looking at those stats going, right, well, obviously we're doing the UK, we're doing Ireland. Maybe we should go to Indonesia and Brazil and Peru and South Korea, because that's where our biggest streaming audience is.
Yeah.
But people are buying stuff. I mean, I was in a H&B the other day, strangely, which is not a thing I could have said much in the last sort of 20 years. I was in H&B, and again there they had all the Oasis vinyl up on the wall. It's everything around the band has kind of started. And they were doing reissues, weren't they, and remasters and stuff. So there was activity.
To be honest, the timing. We should have probably known just through the timing, because when they announced the dates, it was the day after, I think. Well, they split up on the bank holidays, on the August bank holiday in 2009, and then so the week that they announced the gigs, it was the anniversary of them splitting up and the 30th anniversary of the release of the first album. So it was perfectly timed. The interesting thing is, and I suppose streaming has probably contributed to this quite a lot. In terms of making money, they probably made more money out of selling CDs and vinyl in the old days. But in terms of what streaming has done, has brought Oasis to a different audience, another generation, who, if we'd have been living in the old days of just record shops, there'll probably be some Oasis records in a corner somewhere. But with streaming, it's so, their music has been so accessible and has been kept alive for new generations of fans who have heard all the stories about Oasis from their mums and dads and aunts and uncles, and are now feeling like they're missing out. And this demand is due to the fact that for some people it's a once in a lifetime chance to see them, and I think that's where partly the demand has come from.
Would you remember when we did that live show in Sheffield and Liam Gallagher was playing that night, and there were all these young lads on the train singing
Yeah.
Oasis songs
Yeah.
Firmly into their ears, and they couldn't have been, what, 22, 23 years old? So they're one of the few bands of that era who've not only got a decent audience in stream, but like you say, they're kind of reaching Gen Z listeners.
I think that there's another thing here as well, which I think there was some research around this post-COVID, how the appetite for big events has increased. How fans are looking for firework moments, big shows, big experiences that they can talk about, which sort of feeds into this narrative that the mainstream audience is now more into one big blowout gig than possibly going to see, someone new round the corner in their local pub. I mean, not everyone, but it seems to be where part of the mainstream audience is, which seems counterintuitive to me in a cost of living crisis, to just lamp all your money on one thing. But then at the same time, it's a big family night out. Maybe it's a treat, certainly something you can tell your friends at work about.
Get your mum and dad to pay for the tickets. That's exactly what it is.
But
yeah, mum and dad, you love Oasis, don't you?
Yeah, gigs as a big day out. That's a thing. I mean, Oasis is perfect, isn't it? Because whether you're a fan or not, it's basically a bragging rights event is part of the attraction.
Yeah. And but also, there's enough time between buying the tickets now and the event where you'll have saved up some more money to spend on the day.
Yeah,
which is the other thing. When you have that big gap, you can you buy the tickets now. It's not till, what is it, June next year? It's summer, isn't it?
But do you think? I mean, I think there's a real appetite for making memories with either big or maybe boutique. We were talking about those gigs in forests and places like that, which expensive but small. But it's a memorable gig, or just seeing something in a gig in an unusual setting, whatever it is. That this seems to be quite a strong market now.
Yeah, well, we won't go. I could do a whole show. We should do a whole show on this, but I got sucked down the cruises rabbit hole when we were researching this show.
The cruise? Going on a cruise?
All these cruises with bands. There's some amazing ones. Like there's the Headbangers Boat, which is Lamb of God, Carcass, and Napalm Death, on a cruise from Miami to Dominican Republic. There's a hip hop one, which is Busta Rhymes, Method Man and Redman, Rakim, and DJ Jazzy Jeff. That's Miami to Bahamas.
What? No Cypress Hill doing When the Ship Goes Down.
I think maybe they were like, you shouldn't do that one. No, we will let them on.
No,
there's a smooth jazz cruise, Kenny G and Candy Dolfer, which I've already booked tickets for. And there's an 80s cruise, which I think you'll be excited about this. It's Squeeze, Adamant, Sheila E., Men at Work, Andy Bell out of Erasure, Tapau, and Warrant, which in terms of all the different things that happened in the 80s that had nothing to do with each other as scenes, that's a pretty good job of picking one from each. So yeah, Adamant followed by Warrant, followed by Tapau. Beautiful. But yeah, you're right though. I think there's this idea of experiences, isn't it? And there's even VIP ticketing firms that you don't just buy the ticket, you buy the travel, you buy the food, you buy the stuff around it, and then the concert is at the centre of it. So this is becoming the thing people spend all their money on. But I think we were worried about, what does that mean for those small gigs? What does that mean for those small bands? Does it mean that they'll
Yeah, I mean, we'll hopefully have some more stats on live music. The organisation Live puts out its annual report tomorrow morning, and we'll cover that on the next episode if we can. Sorry, by the way, if you heard a large van type vehicle reversing down our road. That was the first of the Oasis kit being backed into their new rehearsal room around the corner. Actually, that's a thing, isn't it? How long will it take them in a room to relearn all their songs? Because they'll have to rehearse. They'll have to spend some money on doing production run-throughs. I'm just adding to the costs of what it's true.
This is the risk, though. This is where I said there wasn't any risk in terms of selling the tickets, but this is the real risk. Is if they're terrible, then it would damage their legacy. I think all those people seeing them for the first time would go, "Oh my God, they're rubbish." So that's the one thing they need to spend their time on now, is making sure they're brilliant. Because, and I don't know how many. I found my ticket from Finsbury Park 2002 the other day, and that was a soul destroying gig. They were just surly, sullen, not interested.
Yeah.
And they've got when you come back, you can make loads of money, but you've got to be good, because if you're not, this is the age of everyone saying how shit you were, posting videos, and
Well,
that can be damaging.
And again, just coming back to that point about, premium price tickets, once you've paid a lot of money for a ticket, you're going to expect the perfect, well, not the perfect, but you're going to expect an enjoyable experience, aren't you? You're going to want to feel you've had a good time and the earth has moved, because it won't be quite the same if you're surrounded by a gang of 6 bucket hats who've been drinking since Doncaster.
Unless you're in a bucket. Who do you think I wonder what they're going to do about support acts? Because there's like 2 ways they can go. Is there one they could go is they could get Richard Ashcroft, Ocean Colour Scene, reunite the old kind of Norak gang.
Yeah.
Or they could get some really good young bands and give them that chance to play at Wembley, which would be cool. Yeah.
Did you see? Sorry, no. Now I won't be able to find it. But did you see? Someone did a mock-up ticket after the news of the gigs was announced. They did a draft ticket, Oasis ticket, which had the lineup on it. Which obviously is, and it was a fake ticket. This is entirely fictional, but so this is what I mean. But some of these are plausible. Okay, so Oasis supports LCD Sound System, Blossoms, Cortinas, Paul Heaton, Kasabian, Fontaines DC, and then this made me very excited. DJs including Dan Carey. Do you know Dan Carey from Speedy Wonderground? Dan Carey, Kevin Parker, and Steve Lamacq. And I thought, wow. I'm on the bill. I'm on the. Oh,
that's good.
It's fake. Anyway, never mind.
And you know, it would be because I suddenly remembered that Blur had Weller last year, didn't they, at Wembley? Paul Weller did. So they've already. So I wonder if he's kind of ruled himself out of playing with Oasis because he went with Blur last year.
Yeah,
but he bridges the 2 camps, doesn't he? I think.
If Johnny Marr isn't on that bill, I would be quite surprised, wouldn't you?
I reckon they'll do Champagne Supernova, and Johnny Marr and John Squire will come on to do the solos at the end, maybe.
Oh, the Squire, of course, yeah. Can I just, before, and I know we're running out of time, but just as a final point, which I have to make this point because I'm the chair of Live, but we should just mention that the Oasis gigs won't just make money for the band and the promoter. The money that it will bring into local economies is going to be huge as well. I mean, I don't need to tell you how many additional kebabs will be sold in Cardiff after the Oasis gigs. And also, as an example of dynamic pricing in the real world, how much is it going to cost you to book a hotel room in Manchester when Oasis are at Heaton Park? It's up. Some hotels are into the top hundreds. Some are charging over $1,000 for a night in a hotel.
It's weird, isn't it? Because normally you get more warning. You can book a hotel, whereas this was quite quick, wasn't it? So you had to be quick for. Yeah. But I wonder if the kebabs will get surge pricing. If I had a kebab shop next to the venue, I'd be like, right, £20 kebabs, come and get them.
I mean, you can pretty much bet on the walk up to Heaton Park there'll be 1 or 2 shady vendors, won't there? On the other side of the other thing
I saw, actually, talking of Live, and I did see the Music Venue Trust doing what I expected them to do, which was they were pointing out all the venues on the original Oasis tour and how many of them are closed. So I think these gigs are maybe going to be another moment to talk about that issue. I'm sure the Music Venue Trust will be talking about it a lot in the run-up, about how the venues that gave Oasis a start, how many of them are not putting music on or have closed down. So I think it might be, in a weird way, a good moment, or not good, but a good opportunity to talk about the role those small venues played in this band who are now selling out Wembley many times over.
I think they've already hinted at that, and the fact that had a small amount of money come out of every ticket that was sold for the Oasis shows, then I mean that would have more than propped up the grassroots circuit and helped and helped the next generation of promoters. Yeah, I think you're right. That will definitely be part of the narrative, I think.
The last thing I actually had, you mentioned Paul Heaton, actually, didn't you, in that fake lineup? Did you see some of the tweets about him around? There were a lot of people talking about him and about how I think he has capped tickets for his arena tour at 35 quid or something. And people were sort of pointing him and saying that is how to do it. Obviously, he's at a different a different level, different crowd, different. It's not. He's been playing for a while. He's not gone away and performed. But it was interesting seeing the love for him and how he's going about his touring business. That made me think, yeah, it's not all people trying to get as much money as they can. There are people out there thinking about, how do you tour in this time and how do you treat fans well. So I'm glad he was getting some sort of plaudits alongside all this.
I'm sure we have missed out one or two points which we could have made about the Oasis gigs, but then again, there's probably some of you listening thinking that's enough Oasis, Ed. So we shall leave it there. Can I just mention before we go, though, just in case you've been on holiday over the past few weeks, possibly, or just missed any of the recent episodes, I highly recommend our chat with Sam Duckworth, Get Cape, Wear Cape, Fly, talking not just about his career so far, but also what artists can do for themselves in the future to build their own careers in more imaginative and sustainable ways. We also spoke to Martin Talbot from the Official Charts Company about how the charts work and how, as they are the guardians of the top 40, how they're always looking for ways to improve how the charts are compiled. And we did a pretty good listeners' questions episode as well, which went up last week. Talking of which, if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, do email us. We'll do our best to find out the information you need. Get in touch at thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support our work, have a look at our Patreon page where you can become a Price of Music fan or super fan for, I think it's as little as £2 a month, something like that. Or even maybe just go old school. Just tell a few friends about the Price of Music. Spread the word about us on social media. We would be ever so grateful. For now, though, thanks. Lovely to talk to you again, Stuart.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. And we're not too long to the next one now. Not too long.
Yeah. And there goes the lorry again. Time to go, everyone. Join us next time. Cheerio.